Libya's embattled leader clings to power, with his military unleashing the bloodiest crackdown among the wave of protests sweeping the Arab world. But how long can Muammar Gaddafi survive? And what are the risks if his regime is toppled? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Hazem Sika. Despite mounting protests against his 42-year rule, Muammar Gaddafi remains defiant. In a brief appearance on Libyan state TV in the early hours of Tuesday, he quelled any suspicion that he had left Libya. Monday night saw his forces crack down fiercely against protesters using live ammunition, machine guns, and even reports of warplanes firing on demonstrators. As the death toll continues to rise, world powers have spoken out in condemnation. Let's take a quick look at the challenges facing Gaddafi, which have led many to argue that his days in office are now numbered. The number of people taking to the streets is ever growing. Many of the cities are now under protesters' control, adding pressure to his regime. Two of Libya's largest tribes, the Tuareg and Warfala, 1 million strong, have now joined the uprising, adding further gravitas. And elements of the military have defected, as well as high-level officials of the government, including a number of ambassadors, have resigned. Well, for more on this, we're joined now by our three guests. From Washington, D.C., Ibrahim Saad, Secretary General of the National Front for the Salvation of Libya. From London, Mahmoud, a solicitor and coordinator for World Medical Camp Libya, an aid organization helping to transfer medical equipment and supplies into Libya through the surrounding borders. And from Minneapolis, Congressman of Minnesota's 5th District, Keith Ellison. I want to welcome all three of you to the program. Ibrahim Saad, if I could start with you. We asked this question at the top of the program. How long can Muammar Gaddafi hang on to power?
I think his days in power is very limited. And with the help of the international community, we could shorten this time, and we could shorten the suffering of the Libyan people. We could shorten this massacre and put an end for it.
What do you want the international community to do?
Well, I think what I'm hearing today, that the Security Council is going to convene, this is the right step, the first step, and it is a little bit late, but it's better to start than nothing. And I hope that the international community, through the Security Council, will take all measures to help the civilians, to help Libyan people from this tyranny, from this regime, which is certified terrorist, and using all kind of heavy machine guns, heavy artilleries, and live munitions, even using aeroplanes to quell these demonstrations. Using mercenaries, this is a crime against humanity, crime of war, to use mercenaries against civilians, against the people of Libya. These all crimes, and I think Gaddafi is committing a genocide against the Libyan people, and we have to move very quickly, because the threatening language which we hear from his son, even he did not have any authority to speak, but he threatened the Libyan people with very, very dangerous threats, including civil war, including burning the oil fields, and including many other things which really raise a very dangerous situation in Libya. So I think with the uprising, with the helping of the Libyan people, with the step forward for the international community, we have to stop this massacre, and we have to stop any kind of dangers which will be raised by Gaddafi stay in power, even for extra few days.
Keith Ellison in Minneapolis, I saw you nodding in agreement to some of what Ibrahim Saad said there. Do you think also that there could be a much better response from the international community?
Well, I think that the international community needs to be very clear that it's going to do everything it can to stand with the people of Libya. That means taking measures that are within the international community's control to limit the ability of Gaddafi's regime to attack and assault and murder the people of Libya simply because they're standing up for what all people all over the world want, which is a voice in their own governance. The fact is, however, that Libya is unique Libya, because of years of sanction and because of the eccentricities of the leadership, is somewhat less accessible to the world than other of the countries that we've seen having uprisings of people across those societies. And so because of that, you know, the foreign journalists are excluded, and most of what we see out of there is just footage taken by amateur camera people. So
do you think is that why the crackdown has been more brutal then, because of the lack of credible independent information coming out of the country, the media crackdown that you referred to?
Absolutely, yes. As a matter of fact, I think that this is a deliberate effort by the Gaddafi regime to maintain power because they know that when the international community is aware and when the Libyans themselves are armed with the ability to communicate, then his ability to control and abuse them is going to be limited. But he is in an unsustainable situation. And the only question now is how much more blood, how much more suffering is he going to impose on his people? The international community needs to step forward in an aggressive way to make sure it comes to an end quickly.
Mahmoud, in London, I know that you have a personal stake in this. I understand that you have family in Libya. Have you been able to get in touch with them, and what have they been telling you?
I have been getting in touch with them. Unfortunately, yesterday it was very difficult to get through, and we were all growing increasingly worried about the welfare of our families. I've got family both in Tripoli and in Benghazi. And in Tripoli, there was a lot of shooting with planes. It was very clear that Gaddafi was using rockets and a very heavy machinery on people. It made it very difficult for people to go out on the streets, as I understood it. It is very difficult to get through to people and to get in touch with families. It's actually the phone lines have come back on in the morning, but it seems like they're being cut off again this afternoon. I'm finding it difficult now to get through to my I've got my parents there and my brother and my entire extended family, both between Benghazi and in Tripoli, and it does not look very promising, especially in Tripoli. It's looking very, very scary at the moment.
Ibrahim Sahad, I know we referred to this at the top of the show about the various tribal loyalties that are going on right now. Help us understand a little bit more about the domestic politics in Libya and how it operates there, because doesn't Gaddafi still enjoy a certain amount of support there?
Well, what we're hearing for the last few days, that even the very little support which he used to get freely from the some tribes is diminishing now. Gaddafi, during the 41 years of his governing Libya, tried to divide Libyan people, tried to divide the tribes, tried to eliminate some of his opponents inside the tribe sectors. And then, of course, he started to use money and use other elements to make the mechanism within the tribes in his favor. But when these tribes has the opportunity to show their real opinion, all of them come forward, and all of them came to support the demonstrators. The last tribes which we hear is the Urfalla tribe, is a very big tribe, and then Tuareg now, and then we before that we hear the tribes of Zwaya, the tribes in the eastern sector, Al-Barasa, where Al-Bayda city, and Al-Hasa, in where Shahat, and Al-Abaidat, where Derna and Al-Gubba and Tobruk and other areas. So now tribes, most of the tribes in the country, not most, I think all the tribes at the moment, are very clear with the uprising and against Gaddafi. What left for Gaddafi at the moment is these mercenaries which he is moving around Tripoli, around other cities, especially in the west. What I'm getting now from Benghazi and from Al-Bayda, and they are running the cities with the committees, and I got very encouraging information about the atmosphere of friendship, of solidarity between all sectors of society. In Benghazi, they were, last night, they made a large prayer. The whole city attended that prayer, and they pray for thanking Allah for his help and praying to help them get rid of Gaddafi. This kind of atmosphere never existed under Gaddafi, because he used all his power to divide people and to make animosities between people about money, about houses, about whatever issues. But with this uprising getting these cities under control, we see this solidarity with this atmosphere is there.
Mahmoud, what more do you think the international community can do to raise awareness of what's going on in Libya right now, given that information is very hard to come by at the moment?
I believe that the international the international community has already stepped up a little bit, especially today, yesterday, and late on Sunday afternoon. I do believe that a lot more could have been done a lot earlier. A lot of lives were lost in Benghazi. I think world leaders could have spoken a lot more strictly than they have, rather than just making comments of disappointment. I think there should have been more firmer language could be used still to stop the violence that's happening at the moment.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think they've been so slow up to this point? Is it reluctance? Is it because there are too many vested interests there?
I mean, I'm not a political analyst to be able to answer that confidently, but I think logically it would seem, because of the interest, governments were quite reluctant to take a stand on the situation, a firm stand on the situation in Libya. At the moment, though, I don't think there is any going back as far as I can see it. And it's actually quite sad, because I think a lot of lives could have been saved in Benghazi had a lot more been done internationally. In Tripoli now, it is going to be very difficult to stop what's happening, because very heavy machinery is being used against people, unarmed civilians who are protesting very peacefully. It is making it very difficult for civilians to even go in the streets to protest in Tripoli. And just before coming on, actually, I received a report from a family member in Tripoli, telling me that all the roads to Tripoli are being destroyed by machinery and by planes to stop the tribes from getting to Tripoli. Control is very much still with Gaddafi and his leadership in Tripoli, and it is getting very, very worrying, especially as to how we're going to be able to get aid through the Tunisian borders and the Egyptian borders. This is why we're here. I mean, I'm here personally to represent the World Medical Camp to talk about getting aids to Tripoli. We've got 2 people on the ground in Egypt at the moment who are hoping to get through to Tobruk and the eastern side of Libya by tomorrow or next week. We've got an amazing amount of support from a great deal of organizations around the world, but there's a lot more that needs to be done. I mean, at the end of the day, we're a group of young professionals who have set up and registered an organization overnight, and we've got a tremendous amount of support, and we need to be followed, in fact, with the convoy, and we need all the support that we can get. We certainly need media coverage.
Keith Ellison, as a U.S. congressman, I mean, you've heard some of what Mahmoud had to say there about what's happening inside Libya and the efforts that are being made to help people there. As a member of the U.S. Congress, what would you be pushing for from your government to do?
Well, I've already made contacts with my government, and I've also made statements myself in strong condemnation of the Gaddafi regime. But I think more should and could be done. I think that we need to immediately begin to investigate whether or not charges can be brought under the International Criminal Court against these people who've committed atrocities against their own population. I think that we need to move forward with perhaps even economic sanctions. I noticed that BP has discontinued and suspended relations with Libya, which is a completely oil-dependent nation. Now, this is not a good thing because, perhaps people depend upon that revenue. But in the short period of time, you've got to do something to put pressure on the Gaddafi regime to leave. And so I think that we need to look at a constellation of economic and social and political forces to pressure Gaddafi to step down, because that is the will of the Libyan people, and to stop the bloodshed that is going on, and that I fear will continue if the international community does not do something to aid the Libyan people. So the answers are not easy. If it was easy, we'd have done it already.
Indeed,
but
and you talk about
we
applying.
Do need to step forward.
Sorry to interrupt. You talk about applying economic pressure, and you mentioned the sanctions. But Gaddafi, who has a long history in power in Libya, he's been down this road before with the West, hasn't he? He's dealt with economic sanctions. He's dealt with the status of a pariah in the international community, and he's weathered it.
Yeah, that's one of the problems that we have right now. I mean, there are not very many levers on the Gaddafi regime. He has he's isolated himself to the point where, with the 2% of the oil that he supplies to the world, the world depends upon that, and yet at the same time, he has put himself in a situation where there's not that much pressure the world can put on him. But you know what? We need to put our creativity together and to make sure that that we do all that we can do. And I will also say again, for any general, any soldier, anybody working for the Libyan military, this is the time to step away from Gaddafi and to follow the lead of those other leaders who have stepped away from the Gaddafi regime. This is the time to defect. The world will greet you as a hero. This is the time to abandon Gaddafi.
Well, we've had, we mentioned at the top there, some of the diplomatic defections from the Libyan regime in embassies around the world, and also in the United Nations. Ibrahim Sahad, I mean, what effect will that have ultimately?
Of course, that will give the world a clear indication that the Gaddafi regime is isolated even from its own people, from its own departments, ambassadors, officers. Now we saw Gaddafi last night. He was isolated, I think scared, alone dictator. And I think we have to put more pressure. I welcome the resignation of the ambassadors, and I call upon the rest of them to distance themselves from Gaddafi. I also would like to see more officers and soldiers, units to join and just stay away from Gaddafi. All of that putting pressure, but at the moment, we also should put emphasis on the need, the very important need for medical supplies, for hospitals, for all kind of aids in the sector. Even food supplies start to be dangerously low. The international community could not wait for starting campaigning for this help for the Libyan people. Gaddafi does not care if the Libyan people, all of them, diminished and he stayed in power. This is what we faced 41 years. And now it is very clear for everybody that Gaddafi did not care about anything but himself, about staying in power. And he used all kinds of weapons to quell this uprising. And he will use other measures which nobody knows except vicious
mind like Gaddafi. Well, you talk about the international community and what they can do here. But I'm interested to know what you think about Libya's two neighbors to the west and east, Tunisia and Egypt, which, as we well know, both successfully toppled their leaders from power. Given the proximity to those two countries, is there something that their Arab neighbors can do more here to help the situation?
Yes, indeed. 2 days ago, we called upon the Egyptian military council to open the borders with Libya, and I'm glad to hear that the borders are somehow open. But that's not enough. I think at the moment we are trying to put on the ground some kind of mechanism to get aids and ship it to the country. I hope that either from the Egyptian border and from the Tunisian border, that aids can flow. Not only that, the harbors of Libya, Libya has 1,200 kilometers on the Mediterranean. There are many harbors can receive supplies, can receive food, can receive hospitals, can receive medical supplies. So we can use all of that venues. This is very important, and we are receiving very stressful calls from the hospitals, especially in Benghazi, Hospital Jala, and in El Baida, in other cities. Now in Tripoli, still we don't have that. We have communication, but that it's not that good communication. But I know for certain that blood is needed, medicine is needed, medical equipment is needed. We need all of that to help the Libyan people.
Congressman Ellisman, it's been suggested that the West has spent too long in recent years cozying up to this regime since 2003 when Gaddafi renounced all weapons of mass destruction. And since then we've had various oil deals, financial deals and so on. Do you think, as it's been said, that it's now paying the price for this and it's now, to coin a phrase, blowing up in their faces?
Well, let me tell you, if you look historically, the West has always, or almost always, chosen stability over justice for the people. It is, I think, accurate to say that as long as economic interests of the West have been served, we have not made. We've talked about justice, but we haven't really stepped up to the plate to really align our values with our actions. But I think that this is an important lesson for everyone. You know, what I've been telling my fellow Americans is that, yes, we should have sympathy and we should have praise for the courageous people in the streets in places like Tahrir Square and in Libya and in Tunisia and other places. But can we now use this opportunity to re-examine our foreign policy priorities? Jimmy Carter is a president who said we need to re-emphasize human rights. As we look at these situations unfold across North Africa and the Middle East, I mean, I think it's important for us to focus on that, but we also have a role to play, and we have to think about how our economic necessities have contributed to these autocratic regimes that are now being toppled. I think that some people would argue that, well, it's in our short-term best interest to just let them do what they're doing, and as long as the oil flows. But I think it's not in the long-term sustainable situation that when we say we believe in democracy, we should be there for people when they actually try to reach for it. And so I think this is an opportunity for self-reflection as we move forward in this new period where we're going to see much more flowering of democracy in North Africa. I think it's a welcome thing, and it's a cause for us to do some review of decisions that we've made in the past.
Mahmoud, I know you're not a politician, but just from the point of view of a non-political observer, perhaps, do you think as well that there are many mistakes that the West has made here in terms of its policy towards Libya, that they've spent too much time cozying up to them?
Undoubtedly, I think the West has spent too much time doing exactly that. Gaddafi, I think, as a result, has become very confident, and as was mentioned earlier, there is very little pressure that the West can put on him and as such, he is now able to do what he's doing without anybody being able to stop him. It is, as I said right at the beginning of the show, is probably most likely to do with the fact that of the interest in Libya and in particular with the oil and natural gas resources that Libya has. Gaddafi has dealt with sanctions in the past and is able to do it again. The only people that will suffer from that, to be honest, are the Libyan people again. I don't think that is a good alternative for Libyans. Pressure can be put in other ways. The international community can step up and rectify errors that have been made in the past. I don't think by sanctions and the BP pulling out of Libya and that sort of behavior is going to benefit Libyan people. If that is what we are after.
The last word. I want to thank all three of you for taking part in the discussion. Ibrahim Sahad in Washington, Mahmoud in London, and Keith Ellison in Minneapolis. Thank you to all three of you for your time. Certainly be interested to see what does develop in Libya over the next few days. We will, of course, be following it here on Al Jazeera. But we want to thank you for joining us here on this edition of Inside Story. As always, we welcome your comments and suggestions. You can email them to us at insidestory@aljazeera.net. Bye for now.